Great, well, welcome all. If you're on Zoom, if you would type into the chat right now, your name, your position, and your company, and be sure to participate as we go along today. So today we're going to be talking about mission, vision, and values, aligning your company by these core philosophy. And some people have come up with some dysfunctional mission statements. I will just read two of them. Our mission is to be an industry leader so we can spend our time and effort fending off and overreacting to our competition who is squarely set on taking us down. Okay, so we don't want that mission. Then someone like to play with some rhyming words. We innovate, collaborate, create, vacillate, procrastinate, pontificate, deliberate, guesstimate, and under-deliver daily to our clientele. So we don't want that one either, right? So we're gonna learn some better ones today for your company. Well, welcome to Ask the Experts. It's the Tri-City Regional Chambers series to help business leaders grow their businesses with practical advice and answers that you can implement right away. A special welcome again to those on Zoom, and this is on YouTube. You'll get the slides of our presenters today if you registered, whether you're on Zoom or here in the room today. And you can always watch us on YouTube later. So in the future, hello future. Did gas prices come down? I'm just kidding. Okay, you never know when people are going to watch this. My name is Paul Casey, and I'm the Executive Director of Leadership Tri-Cities, and privileged to be your facilitator again today. This is the free benefit of your chamber membership because the generous sponsorship of STCU. And with us today is Charlie. Come on up. You just met him a moment ago. Charlie, we are grateful for your support of Ask the Experts. Well, and welcome the crowd.
So yeah, just want to welcome everybody. We just covered, I guess, what the topics are, so I won't rehash that. So just want to say, we're grateful to be a supporter of Ask the Experts. I'm excited to hear from the experts today. Appreciate them coming in and donating their time and their knowledge, and just thank everyone for being here and for the support. So that's all.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, STU. Give me a hand. So for approximately half of our 90 minutes together, our experts will be presenting their gold nuggets on our topic of aligning to mission, vision, and values. And for the second half, they will answer your questions. If you'd like to ask a question, and we do encourage everyone here in the room to ask one question, or at least be ready. If you're an introvert, I'm giving you a 40-minute warning. Okay, so you can be ready for that. If you're on Zoom, you can type it into the chat. You can text me if you want to stay anonymous. So you can write that phone number down or put it in your phone right now, if you would like, or you can raise your hand if you're in the room, or put it in the chat. I'll vet those questions, feed those to the experts, getting to as many as we can in our time. And they'll provide their contact information if you want to follow up them, or just stick around afterward to get to know them a little bit better. So let me introduce our speakers today. This is Rocco.
Hello, everyone.
President and CEO of ARY Engineering. Rocco is a multiple patent holding licensed engineer who brings 23 years of engineering and business acumen to help solve the client's toughest problems. He says engineering is great, but ultimately it's a step to achieve a larger goal. It may be a new home, a new piece of equipment, but whatever your dream is, we want to help you succeed in a way that's most meaningful to you. Rocco has a degree in mechanical engineering from the University of New Hampshire, completed a master's program in mechanical industrial engineering in Germany. He's worked for small and large companies in the US and Europe, and then he became an entrepreneur and never looked back by owning, growing, and selling businesses in the US and Asia. Rocco has focused his career on helping businesses achieve what truly matters and brings that fire to every project he touches. Welcome, Rocco.
Thank you, Paul.
Dr. Aaron Banta is a Tri-Cities native that grew up here right in Richland after attending the University of Washington and receiving his doctorate from the Pacific University College of Optometry. He served our country proudly as an optometric physician for the United States Air Force. Thank you for your service. While on active duty, Dr. Banta was the chief of optometry services at Kelly Air Force Base, Texas. He also served as an adjunct clinical professor for the University of Houston College of Optometry, Indiana University School of Optometry, and the Pennsylvania College of Optometry. You're almost nailing all of them. Following the conclusion of the commitment to the Air Force, Dr. Banta returned home to the Tri-Cities in 2006 to join Center Vision Clinic, where he provides comprehensive primary eye care to patients of all ages. Dr. Banta is an active member of the American Optometric, I'm not gonna say it right again, Association, Physicians of Washington, and the Columbia Center chapter of Rotary International. While not working, he enjoys spending time with his family, serving at his church, fly fishing, and backpacking. Welcome, Aaron. Thanks for being here today. And we look forward to your presentations today.
Thank you, Paul. All right, everybody, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it. Let's see if the clicker works or if I can get it to work. We'll be talking about building your future and setting your mission, vision, and values and why that matters. Before we get started, I wanted to share an image that one of my guys helped me put together for a workshop that we all did setting our company values. I wanted to ask you, take a look at these images. And first of all, are you hearing any of them in Morgan Freeman's voice right now? I know that I do. So what values do you think any of these characters may represent? So take a moment, think about it, and when someone has an idea, raise their hand and I'll call on you and see if you can share what you think some of these characters' values might be. I'll volunteer someone if I have to. What do you think, Zach?
Well, I know Spider-Man really values his uncle. He gave him really great advice.
Right, so family value, right? Arthur, I think I saw your hand go up.
I put Freeman as reliable, no matter what he says, I'm gonna believe.
Right, that makes sense. Anyone else?
Spider-Man has responsibility.
Great responsibility, right?
R2 has loyalty. for sure.
R2D2 has loyalty, right? Perseverance. And some of them is interesting. You might look at the character and you think, am I thinking of the actor or am I thinking of a character? Right? Yeah. Cool. Any others before we jump off? So when we start strategic planning, I always like to start with the heart. And that's what I think the mission, vision, and values ultimately form. They form the heart of your strategy. For those of you who are not familiar with this symbol, it was made famous in a TED Talk by Simon Sinek. It's called Start with the Why. If any of you are interested in it, you can take a screen grab of that and bookmark the talk. It's really interesting. Or you can just look it up, Start with the Why. He doesn't really talk about this specifically, but he does talk about why you do what you do matters more than how necessarily you do it. So why define your MVV? And I'll let you read that. But ultimately, it's because it forms the core of what your business operations are, and it forms a written contract with the rest of your team. So you all know what your shared values are. And we all carry the responsibility for walking that walk, but ultimately leadership carries it the most, right? That is the litmus test on the wall that I have to walk the walk in front of every day. And if I don't, I mean, I have my teams here, right? They'll let me know. And so that's one of the most important parts there. Now, the other thing is we call this building your future, because ultimately, if you're looking to grow, some kind of strategic plan and mission, vision, values will help you achieve that goal. Otherwise, you're trying to make value trades in real time every day on what you're trying to do. When you really take the work and set your mission, vision, and values, you can use that as a litmus test to accelerate all the rest of your planning process. So it clarifies your purpose and direction, right? It gives you that clear roadmap. And so one of the reasons why it will do that is because it will align your team. Everyone starts marching together in one line. And it's a line that they choose to be part of. They know at onboarding what kind of values we have. It also provides that strategic focus, so allows you to prioritize initiatives and to allocate resources effectively. This is again speaking to being able to have a quick litmus test on everything you're trying to do on a day-to-day basis. And it boosts employee engagement by having something clear and shared. Plus, when we do it collaboratively. So we built our company values all together through a workshop, and because the values really do have to come from the team. So in general, they look something like this. So your mission defines your purpose, guides your decision-making, inspires your employees. It's also quite tactical, right? Your vision provides that longer-term direction, drives strategic planning, and encourages innovation. This is what that future state is that we're looking to achieve. And it might just be aspirational. It might be something that you're not really sure if you're ever going to achieve it. It's just something you're always working toward. And then your values, again, those are those bedrock qualities that we all share. So this is our mission statement, and it's always a work in progress because the company grows, the team evolves, our opportunities in the market grow. And so this is where we're at now, and I can definitely imagine ourselves evolving this to a new version in the coming year. As the work that we do changes, the methods we do change, and so we're constantly evolving, and our mission evolves along with it. Our vision, again, empowering people, advancing technology, and enriching society. The reason this matters to us is because the reason I like to run a business, the reason my partner likes to run a business, is because it gives us that freedom. It gives us that freedom to live more or less on our own terms. Now, granted, if we mess up, it's also our blame, right? But it allows us to empower ourselves, our own family, and the lives of the people in our team and in our community. So I'm part of the chamber, I'm part of the executive committee of the chamber and part of the strategic planning committee here. And so I like this kind of work. And Paul's a friend of mine, he likes this kind of work. And after just meeting Dr. Benta, he clearly likes doing this kind of work. And he's going to have some really interesting things to share with you in a moment too. And then our company values, as I was saying, these are the ones that we came up with together. When I came up with our first draft of company values, most of them were there. Integrity was there. Passion was there, humility was there. We added a few others, and these were, I think, kind of just, it's that shared value set that we have as a company. So yeah, builds a cohesive strategy, links the MVV to specific actionable steps in your business, and I'll have something on this sheet. I'm going to get to this in a moment, but this talks a little bit more about those details. So when I take a look at strategic planning, the mission, vision, values sit in that first phase here, right? And as we get deeper and deeper, it starts getting more and more tactical, and that graphic is going to correspond to the different stages on this sheet as well. So if we do take a look at that sheet, you'll see that the mission, vision, values sit at the top. They're the heart of your company. They're the top of your strategic plan. Ultimately, everything else has to be in alignment with this. If you try to do the rest of your end statements or your objectives out of alignment with this, you're not going to be able to do it effectively, collaboratively, because you all will be coming from different perspectives. So if we start with the mission, vision, and values, from there, I like to set a bunch of end statements. These are broad strategic goals. Okay, and you can see them. I'll show you an example of one later. From there, those end statements break down into quarterly goals, and those quarterly goals break down into objectives, and then ultimately action items and tasks. So it's all very structural, clearly, right? Engineering background. So I like the structure of it. But of course, there's no necessarily one right way to do it. Anybody can do it whichever way you prefer. And so one example of an end statement, this is again, that broad statement, is to make ARY Engineering the preferred employer for drafters, designers, and engineers by the end of 2026. And we use that litmus test regularly, especially when we're hiring. I mean, Arthur, we just had to do a revamp on hiring. We had to do all kinds of changes. And when we took a look at it, we said, you know, wow, pros and cons of every choice. Is this going to help us get closer to this goal? And we all looked at each other and said, yeah, it does. The funny thing is that a couple of years ago, when we were staring at some other kinds of opportunities, we looked at that and thought, man, that's so far away. Are we ever going to get there? And now it really feels like we're really making the kind of steps that are going to get us there. Yeah, so again, enhancing team engagement, enhances morale, increases commitment and empowerment. It also opens up all kinds of opportunity for sure recognition and reward, team cohesion, but it's ultimately a test for me, really, as I stand in front of everybody, because I have to walk the walk more than everybody else. And so some of the resistance I hear about, and we'll talk about resistance here in a minute. But when we talk about resistance to defining your mission, vision, and values, you can say, I've heard people say things like, well, I've seen someone say, you know, integrity matters, put it up on the wall. But those owners had no integrity at all. Right. And so, yeah, sort of like saying, well, should we never have any speed limits? I mean, when I was younger, I didn't want to. Right. And when I drove in Germany, I enjoyed not having them, but we kind of get why they're there. So the point is, just because someone didn't embody their values well, doesn't mean it makes no sense to have values. Just because someone didn't follow their mission well, doesn't mean that it makes no sense to have a mission. That's really a failure of leadership. And I'll give you another indicator and a little story here before I hand it off to Dr. Banta, is when your company strays from that mission, vision, and values, an alarm should be going off in your head, right? Something is off. If we're wildly in opposition to our values, something core has gone wrong. If we're spending energy and resources trying to do things that are different from our mission, maybe the world has moved on and we haven't caught up, or maybe we're trying to catch up and our paperwork hasn't yet, but there's some dynamics going on there. And I'm sure anyone here, who here is I know we all introduce ourselves, but who here is a business owner themselves? Okay, right, so if you're not a business owner, how many of you have seen big changes in your business or your job since COVID happened? Right, big changes, right? It seems like ever since COVID happened, every year there was another like wild kind of catastrophe that was happening, just one after another. And the speed of the world has moved on. Having your mission, vision, and values defined helps you communicate to your team what you're doing, but it also gives you something to say, hey, does this mission really work for us anymore? That's what we said we were going to do 2 years ago. Gosh, kind of a lot's changed since then. So it's important to have it, and the fact that they mean something, but they're also dynamic, helps you grow with your team and grow with your company. So as Paul, as I was saying, if you're not growing, you're going, there's only one other direction, right? You really can't be flat in business. And so if you don't want to have any strategic plan for growth, you don't need one, but you're choosing what your other option is. Okay, so overcoming internal resistance. This is an important one. So how many people here, either you yourself or have heard anyone express resistance to strategic planning in general or mission, vision, value specifically? We've all heard it, right? Right? And probably for the reason I just said, because at some point or another, you've seen someone where it's BS. Is that about right? So how to deal with resistance. And so one of the things I find is by using transparent communication, we can help to get over resistance. And having those boards up on the wall is as clear as possible. Our mission, vision, and values are in our employee handbook. Everyone reads it, signs it. Those exact same texts are up on the wall. We just moved to an office, so they're not up on the wall yet in our big office, but we're getting there. And we've already outgrown that office, so anyone have any rental space, let me know. Involvement and empowerment helps as well because you start bringing people in to help define the course of the company. And with a small company, we have wide latitude to do that. We also have a natural sort of mentorship vibe in our company. I'm part of the WSU National Board of Advisors. Arthur's an adjunct professor at CBC, so we're always connected to students. We love talking with students and empowering people in general. So I think some folks might be more afraid to involve people in too many things. And that can backfire if you ask people to swim in a pool that's too deep for them. But helping people have some autonomy to buy off on what they're doing helps a lot when you're getting people, when you're trying to overcome resistance. Obviously, being consistent and credible helps. I think that if you can't be credible, you have no business necessarily putting up any kind of mission, vision, and values. And the market will probably correct and take care of you on its own because dishonest businessmen or business people don't really last super long, especially not in the Tri-Cities, right? We know what everyone's doing. It helps you address concerns, right? And it also will provide some positive reinforcement. So if you can do those things, you will help to overcome internal resistance. Because I'm an engineer, I'm going to take you a little bit deeper. Here's my chart, okay? It's only one chart. And we even use little resistor symbols. So if any of you were thinking of the electrical resistor, we really had to take it the whole way down. This is my research about change resistance. As I became more into leadership and management, I started realizing I was running into this quite a lot. And my original theory of just bullying through it and making everyone do what I want stopped working really fast. So I had to improve that. I had to find some new chops. And so we all have a natural amount of change resistance that we feel. And although some people are more change resistant than others, it's really very situational. And you can generally assess how resistant someone will be depending on these two axes. If they have a choice in the change, they'll tend to be less resistant to it. If there's not much at stake, they'll tend to be less resistant to it, right? But let's say everyone has to shut down for COVID. That was imposed, lots at stake, not a big surprise that there was a lot of resistance to that change. Conversely, if someone demonstrates a lot of resistance to something in your plan or your leadership or your MVV, they probably feel like a lot's at stake and they don't have much of a choice. Right? So it's going to take some time to dig in, but it'll be very situational. And so it's worth it to take a little bit of time, discuss it with them, find out what it is, and look at yourself very credibly. Like, am I credible? Have I missed? Look in the mirror, have a good mentoring staff or mentoring group that will help correct our mistakes as leaders, because we make them too. And have great frank conversations with your team. I mean, they're here in the front row, they can hit me with any kind of tomato if they want. Right? And we just finished a Casamia too, so they might have some. I think I am getting close to the end. Yeah, okay, I'm pretty much at the end. I'll be handing it over to Dr. Banta. He is gonna give us a great example about putting these to work in his own practice. And I want one more parting note is this, that what I was saying before about if you notice that your company is not following the MVV. If it's your company and you're leading it, you really need to take action on that. But if you notice it in a company just you're at, for example, what the company that moved me here, why I started with them was because they really walked the walk. They had great integrity, they did amazing stuff. And I started noticing as things started getting hard, and another engineering analogy, as the pressure builds, it attacks our integrity. You can start hearing the walls creaking around you. Well, I started hearing that. And I started seeing things just that never used to go wrong were going wrong. And I saw the writing on the wall and I made an attempt to fix it. I gave my feedback. My feedback was dismissed, so I left. And unfortunately, a couple years later, the company folded. So in the meantime, I started my own company. And I've made my own mistakes since then. But it's a great signal. So if you ever see that your company's straying from its MVV, some flag should be going up and engage or on. Any questions for me before I hand it off to Dr. Banta? Yes, sir.
What do you kind of use as your own internal alarm bell for yourself? How do you make sure you're not going off the rail?
Well, it's a good question. So number one, I've got a whole team that's very confident and comfortable telling me if I am. One of them smiling really big right there, Cameron. Also, I've got a great relationship with my wife and I talk to her all the time about what I'm doing at work. And if it doesn't pass the sniff test, she'll let me know right away. Also, my own group of mentors and coaches that I work with, I always run everything by them as well. And I vetted them to make sure they align with my values, and they have no problem telling me when I'm making a big dumb decision. So that's how, but it's a lot of active work. I found that the further I progressed as a leader, the more I realized that the key to leadership is just being someone who can help develop the people around them, bring some kindness, bring some support, and be reasonably good in your field. I don't have to be the best engineer. I've got a great team. They're great at what they do. But I'm good at pulling people together, working with people and getting things done. And so I found that although I thought it would get much more complicated, it just tends to get simpler and simpler. But the work is with that guy in the mirror or that gal in the mirror. And that's sometimes pretty hard work. Good question. Thank you. Any other questions? There will be more Q&A time at the end too. Yes, Andres?
Okay, over time, since we grow as people, should our missions or values also grow with us while we do it? And how do we interpret or put that inside our business?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that, ask 10 people, get 20 opinions on that one. Some people really believe that values are immutable and they'll never, ever change. I believe that certain aspects of values change. Like before I had a family always mattered to me, but it was different. Before I had my own kids, family was different, right? I was a kid. Now that I'm an adult, family means something different to me. Integrity means something to me more now than it used to, right? Integrity only counts when it withstands the pressure, right? So if your integrity folds the first time you try to demonstrate your values, you got more work to do. And so I think it does evolve. And then on the mission side, the mission has to evolve. right? Because we don't live in a static world. The business world is moving and moving faster. We're a relatively small company. We only have 15 people. So we have to adapt. And we have got some very big customers like Amazon Web Services. So we are a tiny, tiny aspect to them, but we provide a very serious service. So we have to be able to advocate for our value while we are whatever, 0.0000 whatever percent of their size. But yeah, I think there's always a level of dynamics. At the same time, you don't want to change your mission, vision, values every week or something, right? There should be kind of a dwell time for them. You should take enough time in building them so they have enough staying. And that's just my thought, but again, ask 10 people, you get 20 answers on that one. Any other questions? Okay, then I'll hand it off to my snazzier looking counterpart.
Well, that was fantastic, Rocco. Thanks for that. I'm learning a ton already. Not the least of which is we're being evaluated for these talks. That's good news. So I've also learned that you should bring like your whole team to stack the deck and bring out the evaluation. And prior to that, you should take them out to lunch. So great business tools already. Also, for those of you who don't know Paul really well, you should be careful not to associate with him. Because if you sit next to him serendipitously at fundraiser breakfast, you end up doing stuff like that. So here I am. This is my first time actually setting foot in this building, so it's nice to be here and it's nice to see some familiar faces around the room. So let's get started. So starting off my talk, as should be done with a corny vision pun for an eye doctor. Vision is seeing more than 2020, identifying your organization's core values and incorporating them into a clear path for your team. So as Paul asked Rocco and I to speak together, I hadn't met Rocco, I didn't know him from Adam, and so we got a chance to meet via webinar to discuss his background and his take on business and MBB. And he's quite clearly an expert. He has started and sold multiple businesses. He's applying this very strategically and tactically in his current business and with his team, and I could see them nodding because he bought them lunch. And but they see him bought in. This seems like this isn't just Kool-Aid he forces people to drink by waterboarding. This is really what they do, and they hang their hats on in their company, and I think that's fantastic. So the approach I thought I would take is more local. We have a small business and we have evolved over time. And so I wanted to talk about how we've incorporated some of these principles into our clinic. When I came to the Tri-Cities or back to the Tri-Cities in 2006, I was employee number 8. We are approaching 30 at the moment, and we're very proud of that because we, as I told our newest teammate who came on board with us yesterday, I like first day to be like the birth of a child. I want it to be a celebration of someone else coming to the team, and it's a sign of growth and that we're able to help and serve more people. We'll go the correct direction. So who am I to tell you how to do this? You know who I am. This is where I work. There's my contact info, so feel free to reach out to me. And why am I qualified to even be up here? So all joking aside, I like to tell people that if we do things well in our company, it's probably because we screwed it up and then fixed it. We learned from our mistakes. And because I'm not proud, I'm not afraid to copy other wise people or more successful people that are around me. I once heard it said, actually I've heard it said many times, that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. If you want to grow, if you want to be challenged, if you want to be successful, you need to stretch. You need to surround yourself with other people who have success and share your core values in mind. So the first half of an interesting quote is imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And so here is a brief list of some of my references. I put that up there for anybody who wants copies of the slide and doesn't want to write all of it down. One of my favorite books, maybe my favorite all-time business book, is Good to Great by Jim Collins. If you haven't read that one, it's a great one. It's a bit dated right now, The premise of the book is Jim and his team looked across major industries in the United States and were looking for outliers, businesses that were dramatically outperforming their competitors, and tried to identify the nuts and bolts reasons for why. If you read the book, you'll immediately read some that have horribly bombed since then. And he wrote a series of books about why some of the ones who were outlined in his first book went on to fail because they departed from the principles that separated them. And then how some of them, and yet another book, regained their success. So one of the principles in his book was called the hedgehog principle. It basically was rooted out of the idea that in life, a hedgehog doesn't do a whole lot, but it does one thing really, really well. And that's defend itself by rolling up in a ball. Right? It doesn't have to be crafty like a fox. It just does one thing over and over again. And so one of the principles he found that made people successful in business was identifying things that they were passionate about, things they were really good at, and things that actually made money. And where those things overlap is where the secret sauce is. It's great if you're passionate about it, but if you can't get out of your mom's basement because it doesn't make money, you're probably not going to be real successful in business. And not everybody here is necessarily in small business, but I think the principles apply even across NGOs and nonprofits, because your funding has to come from somewhere, whether it's grant money or it's tax revenue. If you don't do a good job in perpetuity, your funding sources are likely to dry up. Likewise, if you hate what you're doing, it's going to be hard to sacrifice the minutes and hours and days and weeks and years of your life to keep going back to the salt mines just to make money. There are a lot of ways to make money. In his book, he talked about, can you be the best in the world at? That's a bold statement. I think it's easier to look on a local level. What can I be the best at here in my sphere of influence in the Tri-Cities? And if you're fortunate enough to have a business that can reach beyond the local, like yours does, and yours does, then you can scale that. You have to decide who you want to be, and you have to decide where you want to go. And he uses the analogy of a bus, that this is a bus, your business or your company or organization is a bus and it's going somewhere. Well, there's a lot of different kinds of buses. Which one of these is not like the other ones? So different buses have different destinations, they have different purposes, right? I'm not sure who's having more fun, the people on this bus or the people on this bus. But they're not necessarily going to the same place, right? If you don't know who you are and you don't know where you want to go as an organization, that's a recipe for trouble. Rocco, I think, put it eloquently. If you're not growing in business, you're going away. I talk about businesses that trying to walk up a down escalator. If you stop hustling, you're going down, right? The world is evolving around us, and COVID is one perfect example. But the world's changing, so you can't keep doing things the same old way. That having been said, there are some age-old core values and principles that never get old, right? So you need to hang your hat on who you truly are and who you want to be and define that. So mission, vision, values, tagline, Rocco's the expert at that, right? So I'm going to talk mostly about vision in our practice, but I think all of those are important. I think you need to identify your guiding principles and use specific language. I think Rocco explained that eloquently as well. It needs to be general enough to apply to lots of situations. Obviously, the longer range stuff, the more general it is, right? And when it comes to your mission, your tactical task that you're working on, you gotta be pretty specific. And that changes more often than your long range vision. And hopefully your core values change, or your core values remain the same or close to the same. To your question back there, do they change over time as you get older? I hope the core of my being hasn't changed a whole lot since I was young, but I woke up and got gray hair and I realized that I see the world in more shades of gray, no pun intended, than I did when I was young. Everything was black and white for me when I was young. And I see more nuance to the world, and I don't think every bridge is worth dying on anymore. So I think you get different perspective. I hope with birthdays comes wisdom. Not always the case. There's not a linear correlation, especially not for some people. But I hope I'm a better version of who I claimed to be when I was young. So we got together with our team a few years ago, and we decided to define who we were and what our long-range vision was gonna be. And not everyone in here is a business owner, but I think it's critically important that everybody in the company is involved. So whether you're the newest employee, whether you're an intern, whether you're the CEO, I think everybody needs to have a voice. Now, at the end of the day, our company belongs technically, legally to me and my business partner, right? So we need to be probably heavily invested in the creation of this. And so what we chose to do is we met with some of our key players, our office manager, our department leads, and the owners of the practice. And we had what equates to a pre-meeting, if you will, to set the stage for this. And we did the exercise on our own, what we came up with. But we didn't put anything on paper or make a sign until we had a whole team meeting. Now, if you work for Boeing, that might be kind of hard to have a whole team meeting. But I think you can see how, whether it's in a large group or in breakout sessions, making sure that your individual departments or your teams feel like their voices are heard. And they can share the things that they want to contribute, what's important to them. And then all I asked of my leadership team was to be like the bumpers on the bowling alley lane that I need. Just keep the ball in the lane, right? We know generally where we want to go. We know generally who we are. Let's not go off in too far of a rabbit trail or a tangent. But just kind of guide and direct that. Brainstorm, write it all down. And as we worked our way through this, through multiple sessions, because you couldn't do it in short order, we came up with this. And in my meeting with Rocco, he talked about posting it on your wall. I thought, oh, good, I already did that. And so after we got off our webinar, I ran downstairs and I took this picture. So this hangs behind the front desk in our office. And if you can't see it from where you're sitting, it says enhancing lives by serving others through premier vision care. So I like to talk about how it is our mission every day. The tangible mission each day for each employee is to enhance the lives of the people they encounter. And they do it by serving those people. Our vehicle is vision care. Vision care is what we do. It's not who we are, right? It affords us an opportunity to have touch points with human beings. And we have a tangible service that we provide. Yes, that's what pays the bills. And I hope we do it well. I take a lot of pride in that, and I push myself and my partners, push each other to be the best versions of our professional selves that we can be, but it's not who we are. People who don't know me call me Dr. Banta. People who know me call me Aaron. Right? I was a person before I was a doctor. Like Steve Jobs said, I tell each new teammate on day one, it is your job to make a dent in the universe for each patient that you encounter. That's hard. That's a big ask. And how do I do that when I only get 3 minutes with them at the front desk, Dr. Banta? Right? And they only get 15 minutes with them as the medical assistant. And then the optician gets exactly 13 minutes with them before they have to bring them back to me after their eyes are dilated. It's tough. It's tough, especially when you're learning your job. All of your conscious thought is bent on just doing the nuts and bolts of your job. But after a while, when you become more experienced, it becomes like muscle memory. You just do it. It's like learning to drive. I remember being so afraid to drive. Teaching my son how to drive. So now I'm afraid to drive again. But now I don't think about driving. I told my son, when you are an experienced driver, you watch everybody else driving because they're all terrible at it. You're anticipating trouble. You're doing your stuff automatically. So likewise, in your job, you'll learn to become fluid with your job description. I'm hoping that you continue to grow and stretch, and so some things will always be new and challenging. But once the rest of it's fluid, then you can focus on enhancing the lives of the people you're with. Let your personality shine through. Connect with them in the moment. Do what needs to be done to create positive and memorable experiences for patients. I think I know all the eye doctors in town. I think they're all generally reasonably good people and they do good professional work. So why in the world would patients come to see me or come to our office? It's not because I can do which is better, one or two, a whole lot better than anybody else. I think I'm good at it. You count to 10 over and over again. It works for me. But I think it's because we create memorable experiences for patients. Because we care about the humans that we get to encounter. And I think this vision needs to primarily, or at least first and foremost, apply to the team. The old adage, the customer is always right, is totally wrong. If any of you have worked in customer service, you know that's true. The spirit behind it is good. The spirit behind it is you're valuing the people that you're serving. You also have to know who butters your bread, right? If they hate you, they're not coming back and you're not going to get paid, right? But your team shouldn't be second-class citizens, ever. Sir Richard Branson, who many of you have heard of, owns Virgin Airlines and a whole host of other things. You don't get to be a billionaire without being successful in businesses. He said that clients do not come first, employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of the clients. I was having a conversation with my newest medical assistant last Friday. She came out of an exam that she was preparing for me. She was running woefully behind and she was very apologetic and probably worried that she was coming up to her new boss running late, and she apologized because the patient she was with was going on and on about how her daughter had just died. And her husband had lost his job. And she couldn't break away from the conversation. And I told her she did the right thing. Some of the most important work we do every day has nothing to do with eye exams. I've had patients come in, didn't get an eye exam. They paid me for an eye exam, they didn't get it. We cried. Or we prayed. Or I listened. Or I got to share. And then I brought him back for a free follow-up visit and I did an eye exam. I charged him for it, so I got to do it. But sometimes the most important thing you do has nothing to do with why you woke up that day or what your boss put on your desk or that deadline that you're facing. You can't lose sight of those things, and we've created systems and protocols to try to create a consistent framework for our patients so that they can get a quality experience over and over again. And consistency matters. Just think of Starbucks. No, anybody here work for Starbucks? Okay, so I'll make a bold statement. I don't think Starbucks makes very good coffee. That's just my humble opinion. Starbucks is huge. They've been immensely successful in business, partly because they've created an environment that people like, and they've created a repeatable experience. It's kind of like McDonald's. Not my favorite hamburger, but you go to McDonald's in Tokyo, you go to McDonald's in Austin, Texas, you're going to get the same quarter pounder, right? So people appreciate that consistency, but you have to create margin in your business to meet with your vision and your core values. And ours is about enhancing the lives of people. I guess I should go back to this and say, hanging on the wall does make sense. I think it makes sense for a lot of reasons. It makes sense because it's a constant reminder to the team that this is the vision we've committed to. Right? They can't walk by my front desk without seeing what they're responsible for. It's also an accountability thing for my clients. Because if I have an upset patient or an upset client who's standing by the front desk and we're not living up to this, they get to hold us to account. And sometimes mistakes get made, but I'll tell teammates that if you make a mistake in the spirit of the vision statement, you're never going to be in trouble. Might be a teachable moment. We might have a conversation about how we could have, would have, should have handled that a little differently. and make some adjustments for the future. But if they're trying to do this, then their heart's in the right place. Then you know they're bought in, right? And patients and clients feel that. It's also a reminder to me, to Rocco's point, that I have to walk the talk. And I think if you're in a position of leadership in your company, the weight is heavy. Our employee standards and benefits manual applies equally to everyone. The rules are all the same. But I absolutely expect my leaders and my managers to walk the talk more consistently, more fully than anybody else. Because we need to lead by example, and nothing demotivates somebody more than leadership who doesn't say what they say they're gonna do. Right? So it is each team member's primary responsibility to make a positive and memorable difference in the life of each patient. I think purpose matters. Daniel Pate wrote a book called Drive. It's a great one. If you haven't seen the little video on YouTube, there's one of those videos like the old UPS commercial with the dry erase marker where he gives about a 10-minute talk, I think, at an Ivy League school. And there's a person feverishly drawing cartoons that kind of flesh out what he's talking about. But I can't tell you, ever since we put some of this stuff on our website, defining who we are and the organizations that we support, how many times prospective teammates have commented to me that they chose to apply to our business because of our core values, because we said who we were, and that resonated with them. It matters. And having a purpose for going to work that's bigger than just doing work, it matters if you want long-term teammates. Making widgets only goes so far. Cash is great, but it lacks what I would call inherent value, eternal value, right? You can be rich. I know a lot of rich doctors who hate their lives. That's a sad commentary. People that went into the field because they thought that's what their parents wanted them to do, or they were trying to prove something to somebody. And they got in so much debt that they can't afford to not be doctors now. And they feel stuck in their lives. So money truly doesn't make happiness. It can make certain things a whole lot easier, but it doesn't bring joy. You got to have more of a purpose. I think you need to incorporate your core values in your training, into your onboarding. So day one in our office is a culture talk. They get a shortened version of some of this stuff on day one. We haven't always done it this way, and I'm ashamed that we haven't, but we've tried to incorporate it now where you get to hear about who we are from moment one and get bought into the vision and mission and values of our practice. And we do an eye exam for free on the new teammate. There aren't a lot of advantages to working for an eye doctor, but eye care is one of them. And we get to walk them down to the optical boutique and they get to pick out their very first free pair of glasses on me. Because I don't think it's reasonable that my team doesn't have great eye care if they're here to serve other people. Why do the people who are being served get it before my own people? So we make that a priority, and we buy lunch for the whole office. And we have a pizza party or whatever it is to celebrate that we have a new teammate on board, because we want it to be an enthusiastic addition. But we also use those core values when we're making decisions. And we use the hedgehog principle often, my partner and I.
Yeah.
We want to do this. That doesn't really jive with what we can be the best at. So we go a different direction. But when we're making difficult decisions, whether it's staffing decisions, whether it's investment decisions, whether it's expansion decisions, anything, how do we deal with a difficult patient or an unreasonable person? Well, what does our core value say? What's the right thing to do in this situation? And I'll be honest, I'm not perfect at it. The only time I walk on water is when there's wet pavement. But I think it's something that is an anchor in the storm. When you don't know what to do, look at the core values. Do that and you're going to be all right. If your core values are on point, if they are what they should be, then it's never going to do you wrong in business. You may not be in a position where you're in HR or you're influencing hiring, but I think having the right people on your team is critically important. It really is all about the people in the office. You gotta hire for character and for personality. Making widgets can be taught. I know not everybody has the acumen to do every job. I'm not an astrophysicist. I probably can't do that. But just because somebody's good at pulling levers or making widgets doesn't make them a good fit for your team. They gotta be aligned with your core values and your mission. And I think you have to constantly go back to the well. It isn't just a sign you hang on the wall that becomes one of those annoyingly boring or kitschy posters from the 90s. Remember like 47 different motivational posters in the Air Force Base, you know? It needs to be who you are, and you need to constantly be bringing it up. And maybe it does need to evolve over time. But that's something that we can all be rooted in. Great leadership requires an unwavering commitment to the mission, to the vision, and to the core values. I think creating and maintaining a great culture is more than being a cheerleader. I'm honestly not a great cheerleader. One of my favorite friends and good colleagues is that guy. He makes you feel like the center of the universe every time you talk to him for like 2 minutes. And then he goes on to the next person and shifts the whole weight of the universe to someone else. But you just glow. He glows. I'm not that guy. I'm the process guy, right? It's good to have a balance of all those things, but you have to be able to do the tough stuff as a leader too. And that's super hard because not everybody is good at managing conflict. We talked a bit about what happens if there isn't engagement, and doing all the things you can to grow and foster your people, to mentor and develop those people is important, because if we're as committed to our team as we say we are, it's not about being a one mistake office. It's about living life together. King James Bible refers to patience as long suffering. I like that word, because sometimes when you're dealing with people, you have to suffer with them long. Because people are people, and we all have drama, we all have mess, and we all have unexpected things come up in our lives that influence us, whether we like to think it or not. The adage that we can just check everything at the door and be happy-go-lucky people in the office. We try our best, but that's not always the case. So sometimes you have to walk with people through their troubles. If we're willing to do it for our clients, we should be willing to do it for our team as well. But as leaders, we also have to remember that we have a whole team, not just 1 or 2 people, right? And nothing demotivates high achievers in the office than leadership who tolerates people who aren't pulling their weight, or people who aren't bought into the vision or the mission, people who are poisoning the well with their attitude, their speech, or their actions. So I think you do everything within your power as peer leaders. Again, if you're not the business owner, peer accountability works way better than the boss coming in the room. Because I guarantee you my staff talks and acts differently when I walk in. It's as much as we try to build team atmosphere, there's always an us and them thing with bosses, right? I get it, and it's unfortunate. But peer accountability is really, really important. And so if the group is bought in, they can help grow and mentor and support each other and hold each other accountable. But occasionally, even in the best offices, you have somebody who's not bought in. And I think leaders need to be thoughtful about how they approach this and know that at times you can't shy away from the conflict. In Jim Collins's bus analogy, he talks about sometimes you have the wrong people in the seats on the bus. And if you can, you get them out of that seat and you move them to a different seat on the bus. I think of somebody that we hired for our administrative department. And she looked over to the optical boutique and said, "That looks way more fun." And we said, "It is." And she moved over, and she's one of my top frame stylists now, because she would have been miserable staring at a computer. She would have been fine at it. But she revels in the patient interaction in the boutique side of things. She's a great employee. We had her on the wrong seat on the bus. So now she's flourishing. But I also think it's hubris, it's arrogance for us as business owners or leaders to think that our personal passion projects or visions are the ultimate trajectory through the universe, and everyone must see it as patently obvious and want to hitch their wagon to us. Right? The universe is a vast and diverse place. People are different, they're going different places. And just because somebody doesn't want to go where your bus is going doesn't make them a bad person. Doesn't make them a bad employee. But sometimes leaders have to make the decision to ask people to get off the bus. Collins talks about how if the bus has to change direction, if the mission changes, if for the health and wellness and success of the company or the organization, it needs to go somewhere else. Some people only got on the bus because it was going from point A to point B. But if you have to deviate now and go to C, they don't want to go there. And they can hamper the mission. And they can poison the well because they no longer are bought into where the company's going. So this is a hard thing to talk about. And I appreciate Rocco's transparency too, talking about when he worked for another company, he wasn't in a position of leadership to officially change it. And so what did he do? He didn't put up a stake. He didn't poison the well. He voiced professionally his concerns. And when he felt like his core values no longer aligned with the business, as the passenger on the bus, he pulled the string.
Yep.
And he asked to get off. I think that's a very healthy and professional thing to do. Jack Welch, the former CEO of GE, said something controversial that was blown way out of proportion, but he said at the end of the year, you should fire the bottom 10% of your employees. Everybody missed all the other stuff he said before that. That was great because they focused on that and all the exceptions to that. But the spirit behind that is that those 10% probably don't belong. They probably don't fit. And it's not healthy for them to be on a bus that isn't going where they need to go. They have a path through the universe wherein they can flourish and be successful. So sometimes you got to set them free. And they will be happier and healthier for it. That's hard when you're going through that transition. I will admit to being a nerd. And when I was a kid, I loved this movie. I used to watch it with my dad. And this is a scene where Mr. Spock sacrifices himself to save the crew of the Starship Enterprise. And he was quoted as saying, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one. So there is no one in your company who is more important than team. Even me. And so when you talk about accountability, if I get out of line, then my team gets to hold me accountable because I don't want to be that guy that's leading the bus in the wrong direction. But I also, as the CEO, feel great responsibility to shepherd and protect the rest of the people on the team. So figure out who you are, figure out where you want to go. Figure out who you need to be and how you want to serve those people and commit to it and do it collaboratively. It's worked for us, and so I hope it works for you. Thanks for your time.
Question time. If you're on Zoom, go ahead and type it in. There's my phone number if you want to text it to me, or if you're in the room, you can just raise your hand and we'll ask our experts. Sure.
We have one in the room, yes?
Yeah, so when you're going through the hiring process, are there things that you look for to ensure that you're hiring people that have the same values and mission as your company?
Yeah, I think we probably both can speak to that one, and we probably both have, I would guess, aligned but similar, but also somewhat different ways of doing it. So we generally, I'll just echo what he said, right? We hire for fit and train the skills that we need. What we do is very specific. So we've got a subset that we're already looking for. So good designers, students, engineers. And so we take a look at just their general qualifications, what they've done. So there's that part, but that's actually really the smaller part. The bigger part is really making sure that they fit culturally, that they fit in within the team. And as Aaron was speaking, I'm gonna lean into the friend side of that right now. As Aaron was speaking, I was taking all kinds of notes because I kept thinking about more and more elements of what he was saying. I was remembering them for ourselves. And you know, one of my jobs, my biggest job, is to define, project, and protect our company culture And the MVV really does that. And so my part of the hiring process is really that litmus test, that this person brings in the right light and the right energy, that they're going to contribute, that they're going to bring the team up. And, you know, by that point, I've already seen them survive with the first down selection matrix, whether their resume makes it. They've already gone through phone screens. They've already passed tactical tests. So by the time they get to me, I am really checking on how good of a fit they're going to be. And so that's another place where the MVV really comes in, that my group already resonates with it. And this person ought to as well, whether they know it explicitly or not. I just let them talk. I ask them questions. I find out what kind of person they are. And of course, you try to do your best you can in the small amount of time you have in an interview. But yeah, that's how I do it. What do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think a few tangible things we do. I took myself out of the first line of hiring. With the exception of professional staff. If I'm hiring other positions, I play point on that. But our office manager, Kim, is far more intuitive and emotionally intelligent than I am. And she does a much better job ferreting out who she thinks will be a good fit for the team. She works more hands-on with the team leads and has a better concept of the role that each new hire is going to play and what we're looking for and that dynamic. But we also do a few things. You know, when we're advertising, yeah, there are a series of qualifications or credentials that may apply for any given position. But once we've looked at those initial applicants and maybe screened out a few, we always send homework in advance of any interview. And it's interesting to see who really wants a job because they're willing to respond to an email or do an assignment before they even apply to your job seriously. They get invited to an interview and they interview with my office manager and the department lead who will be their direct supervisor and knows the job better than anyone else. And those two folks get to know all of the applicants and the cream that rises to the top then is invited for a job shadow where they come in for 2 to 4 hours, depending on their schedule. And they watch the entire patient journey in my practice. So they see what we're about and what the process is. And they spend the rest of that time in the department that they're applying for. It's pretty easy to make yourself look good on paper, although surprisingly, some people struggle with that. You can also fake it pretty well in a 20-minute interview, but faking it for 4 hours amongst your peers is trickier. And then you get the insights of the team too. Do they get a good vibe off this person? Sometimes we get it wrong though. I remember way back when I was in charge of hiring, and maybe this is why I put my office manager in charge of it. We lost our lead technician and we were desperate. We were super busy and 2 women applied. One of whom was a certified ophthalmic assistant. She was credentialed beyond anybody in my office. I thought this is the most qualified person who's ever applied for this position. And then there was a young woman who's a barista, had no medical experience whatsoever. She was just looking to make a change. She was in charge of a mom and pop shack and she was responsible for it. The business owner rarely went there. So she had a certain level of trust and responsibility there. But I hired the woman who was credentialed. She presented just fine. But I knew she was like turnkey, like she'd come in and do it from day one. She lasted 4 hours. And I had to call the other woman back who we had let know that we had hired for the position, and she graciously decided to come work for us anyway. She is one of the greatest humans I've ever met. And she is my lead technician to this day, 14 years later. Because she had the right personality. She was bought into the vision of who we were. The other one was there for a paycheck. And when we weren't the bus she was looking for, she didn't come back after lunch. So I think time in the saddle and connecting with other people is part of it.
Speaking of interviews, would you say job experience or passion is more important? You gotta put those two things next to each other.
I would say that for me, passion. That's such as my off the cuff response. I'd say passion, partly because in my line of work, we tend to hire a lot of young people, not exclusively, Medical assistants, for whatever reason, on average, there are a lot more women that go into that profession than men, and so. We get a lot of young women in particular that are applying, and for some of them, this is their first job after high school. Or after junior college, and so many of them don't necessarily have lots of qualifications, and it's been interesting to see as a small business owner, sometimes you're teaching not only how to do the job, but how to be a professional, if this is their first real job. We've taught people how to iron clothes before. We've bought alarm clocks for people. So I think it's very different than hiring for an engineering firm, where you're looking for credentialed professionals. But even on the doctoral side, again, I'll get back to the idea that most doctors are nerds in high school and have questionable social skills from the beginning. So even professionals need help. They need guidance and they need mentoring in how to work better with patients and how to work as a part of a team. But commitment and passion are critical.
And I like what Aaron said. I agree with it. I would say, I would add a third circle that overlaps them both and says, good to work with is about the most important thing. You've got to be good at your job. You've got to have the chops to do it. You need to have some experience. But frankly, I've worked with plenty of people who have lots of experience that are miserable to work with. And I've worked with passionate people who have no discipline, who cause chaos. And so if you can temper all of that and be good to work with, you probably also like How to Win Friends and Influence People, I imagine, with all the books you listed.
Yeah.
That's also one of my favorites, right? And that's written by Carnegie a long time ago. And that book was originally a series of talks training engineers and technical people how to work with people better. And they started off with a great piece of data. Only 15% of your success as an engineer or technical person comes from how good you are at what you do. And 85% of it comes from how much people like working with you. And I can also, with a little shame, remember opportunities where I could have worked much better with people, where I was the smartest technical person in the room. I made sure to let them know, and no one wanted to work with me. And so I can tie that directly in my past of opportunities that I squandered through my inability to work well with people. And so as a forcing function, I had to learn this. I was a manager from day one. I didn't want to be, but I was. I worked for a big company. I was immediately managing a small team. I had no idea how to do it, and I was awful at it. And thankfully, the team that I was managing were much more mature and patient than I was, and they helped me get better at it. And I just kept on learning that my path to success is going to be by working well with people. So that's my answer to that.
When you're talking about hiring, not necessarily for, their expertise, how do you put that in like when you're looking, like when somebody's looking for a job and they see your job opening, like I would never apply for a job I wasn't qualified for. So how are you putting that out there?
Well, in our line of work, we do outline the job description. And I think a lot of people do rule themselves out, like, I'm not gonna apply for that. It's really interesting to read that if you've ever been in HR or in hiring. It is a total crapshoot. I mean, the stuff people send to you is really interesting and often amusing. So you'd be amazed at the number of people who are bold enough to apply for something they have no business applying for. But sometimes when you are reading what's there, there's something that jumps off the page that just intrigues you. I just hired my new office manager. And I think we did a good job. He seems great, but he had almost no eye care experience. He had almost no medical experience, but there was just something about his background that was intriguing. And we almost did an interview. And then we brought him in and he just blew us away. So I would say that it's okay to take a risk too. If you think it's something that you could grow into. You don't know how to do something until you know how to do it.
Yeah, and I would, again, similar, there are certain aspects of jobs that we hire that have very specific requirements for specific projects, certain amount of nuclear experience or a certain professional attainment or certification. But that's really much smaller as a percentage. And so, you know, when we take a look at the way we put out our job descriptions, we have the details in there. We screen them using either Indeed or LinkedIn. They answer it, and so it outputs a table. So we've got this sort of quick compliance matrix where we can look through people. But we often something will jump out and we'll look back and say, man, did they really need that last one? Or was that more something we wanted them to have? And I would say that Cameron and Arthur are right in the midst of dealing with this right now. And I imagine we're still seeing that kind of feedback from the market, right? We clearly list the qualifications and they have some of them, not all of them. And we hire people that are the best fit. Because again, I think we can train the widget building almost all the time.
I had a woman that recently applied. She was a receptionist in the school district and she saw an ad that I had posted for a physician and must have just seen the salary and applied. And I thanked her for her application and I said, unfortunately, you don't meet the technical requirements of the job. But appreciate your boldness and good luck to you in your future career, right? So also a woman that probably didn't have a lot of attention to detail, so maybe not the best fit for her. But yeah, I think there's just something to be said for putting your core values out there as a part of the advertisement of who you are. And the old Pareto principle that says 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. Again, Jack Welch talked about your haymakers are the top 20% of your employee base. They're the ones that are going to really make it rain for you. So he advocated for taking 50% of all your budget for development and growth and pouring it into that 20% because they'll shine for you. Well, 20% of the population, there's still only 20%. There's only so many really high performers, only so many all-stars out there. If you're an all-star, I guarantee people want to hire you. Yeah, you can't be a doctor if you don't have a license, right? But you can show your passion. You can show your commitment to vision, mission, and values. And if you lead with that, I guarantee you it gets the attention of people who are seeking.
One last piece on that too. A friend of mine was a recruiter for Expedia. Now he's a recruiter for Uber. And so I was just very interested, like, well, they hire a lot of people, essentially unlimited budget. What do they do? What approach do they take? And the job offers that I saw, it's all like a marketing. It's almost like marketing a vacation. It's marketing a change in your life, right? So a job offer in the Tri-Cities doesn't really start with engineering opportunity. It starts with 300 days of sun and a picture of someone paddleboarding. I mean, that's what these job descriptions are like, you know, and it'll say, you know, CAD designer, engineer. Anyone who's going to apply for that job, for the most part, knows what that job is. By the time you get to the bullets in the job description, you pretty much know what it is if you're qualified for it. There might be a couple surprises, but the thing they really want to know is, what's it going to be like to work there? Are the people good? The mission, vision, and values, whether they say it or not, that speaks to them when they read it. And whether they believe it or not, they can find out in the interview. But yeah, it's the job descriptions when we do it the best, and there's always room to learn, is realizing what's it like to live here in the Tri-Cities and work with this team.
Question in the back.
Yes.
So expect an invitation to our fundraising breakfast with both of you. How do you manage your ego the way to all this?
Which part?
In general, like, I mean, sometimes I think, you know, I think being a business owner is challenging and I have a background in culture as well. Sometimes you kind of think you know the answer and sometimes when do you surrender? When do you listen? When do you say, guys, I hear what you're saying, but we're going right? Or, you know what? You're right, we're going left. Explain that. How does that work as it relates to your own ego? Yeah, how do you manage that?
Well, I'll start, I guess. One of the kind of thank you. It was a good opportunity for you. You're right there. Appreciate it. As I was saying before, the work of a leader is really kind of dealing with that person in the mirror. And so one of the things I've learned is I really have no cause to have an ego. I make so many mistakes. I have so many things I'm still learning. And so just trying to be humble is part of that. And that's something that I work on. I love listening to my team. And as my team grows, they really bring such great insights and value. I can't do all the work of the company. And so I tell my people, this is what I tell them all the time. I say, hey, I'm the easiest guy to work with, right? I want to say yes. That's what I want to do. There are going to be a few things I may have to say no to or not yet. But I always want to try to come to the yes, and I guide them to make better and better proposals to me so that I can say yes. Right? And so part of the way I check my ego is I really just try to work with the team. I've done a lot of coaching and consulting in different ways as well. And there's a coach's trap is when we hear this pattern coming out of someone, we jump to a conclusion because we feel that our skill is perhaps better if we make a rapid diagnosis. Wow, great coach, you answered so fast. When it's actually quite the opposite of that. The best sessions I've ever had is I listen for the whole time and I tell them one or two things at the end. Right? I ask a lot of questions. And so the thing that I was keeping in the back of my mind is as soon as I'm sure I know the answer, I should ask one more question. And so that's the thing that I try to do to keep my ego in check. What do you think, Aaron?
I think one of my fatal flaws is I think I'm right about everything. And it's not because I think I'm inherently arrogant. It's because I think a lot and I read a lot. But I'm not arrogant. Getting back to my slides earlier, if I'm good at something, it's because I screwed it up. And because we figured it out as a team, or because I'm copying somebody else, and it's kind of hard to be cocky when you're just copying somebody, right? I think surrounding yourself with an accountability group, whether that's other business leaders, it's a small group or a core cadre of people in your team, people that you can be earnest with and transparent. You said something earlier and I scribbled the name Abraham Lincoln, my favorite president. And one of the things that I revere most about Abraham Lincoln is he barely made it to the presidency. And so what did he do? He filled his cabinet with all of his opponents. Because he was, number one, humble enough to realize that he didn't have all the answers. He was smart enough, number two, to know that other people were intelligent and had other perspectives he should listen to. And number three, if he was going to build consensus, he needed everybody. And so he was, number four, brave enough to surround himself with people that would challenge him regularly. And I think good leaders do that. People on my team humble me up at all. So I don't feel like my ego gets out of control because I'm surrounded by so many other people that do things better than me, that my job is to try and listen more and speak less.
Where's some more places to emphasize the values at work? So I've heard you say on a wall, in an application, on onboarding, especially on the first day. When you don't know how to make a decision, there's 4. Any other places you can think about where values can be emphasized?
May I go first on this one?
Please.
Okay. One thing that we took from the Ritz-Carlton experience was something that they called gold standard moments. And so in our office, we have these little gold slips of paper that are blank, and we just have a name and a date on them. And everyone is tasked on the team with trying to catch one another, living out the mission, vision, and core values. And when they observe somebody doing something that embodies that, they are to write that down. And they are to take that to that person and look them square in the eyes and told them that they caught him and tell them good job. And then they put that slip in a box in our lunchroom. And when we do our staff meetings, we read them all off again in front of the whole team and celebrate that. At one point, I polled the whole staff after I read Daniel Pink's book. All right, I gave him a list of 10 things and I left some blanks for other. What motivates you the most? You want more money? You want more time off? You want more vacation time? What is it? Overwhelmingly, the number one response, I want recognition for the good work that I'm doing, particularly from my leaders and my managers. And most of us are terrible at it because we're so busy. Fighter pilots on a mission, trying to get the job done. For me, it's tricky because I wear 2 hats. I see a week's worth of patients in 3 days so that I have time to run my business the other 2 days or 3. And so the days where I'm seeing patients, it's 12 or 13 hours a day, 20 patients, or 20 every 20 minutes, a new patient. I don't have time to look up much. And so I've had to be very intentional about reminding myself to go around and make personal connections with my team and fill out those gold standard runs. And I try to read them whenever possible when it's the general staff meeting, because I want them to hear it coming with my voice behind it. So I think that's a great way to build, honestly, love on the team.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that using it as the framework for recognition to your team matters. And I think, again, kind of getting back to the core of it, you've got to carry it in your heart. That's the other place it has to be. If you don't really believe it, it doesn't really work.
Question?
Any questions?
You guys mentioned, looking at your values with your team, how often are you guys doing that? I have a friend that works with you, Miss Dr. Becca, and so I know you do a lot of team building. I know you guys do a lot of team building and things. So I know that you guys come together quite often, and you guys do. And but how often do you actually focus on, say, the vision, and then what do you do in those other team building times?
Should I take this one? Go ahead. So the way we do it, and again, it's no one right way. We have it, we review our strategic plan every year. They're in there. We review them. We take a look at them. We see, hey, are we walking this walk? Is this still valid? You know, for a couple of years, we had an older set of values, and I just looked at our team growing and thought, we need to work together to do a new set of values. They really needed a refresh, and we decided to do it. As we started pivoting to some other kinds of work, we realized our old mission statement just didn't really fit what we're actually doing. It was close, but it needed a refresh, so we did it. And so I think my perspective is review them each year at a minimum. You should be seeing them all the time. So if you're walking by it and it no longer fits, you should be feeling that sort of cumulative little voice or whatever. But yeah, that's the way we do it.
And I'll say, honestly, we're not very good about it. You know, it's something that we're evolving and growing into, and I think Rockwell and his companies do it better. For us, I don't think those core values and that vision changes that much. And for us, we do semi-annually, we shut the office down and we do all-day training days, and we use those days as points of focus to talk about more mission level of stuff over the next 6 months or the next year. So it feels a bit more organic, whereas your approach feels a bit more structured, but I think having that structure holds you accountable to doing it well and doing it repeatedly so you don't get out of touch. So yeah, we're growing and getting better.
I appreciate what you said, but I don't know if we necessarily do it better. I really like what I'm hearing over here. I think you've got a great gift for it. And I don't know if it's necessarily like getting a grade for how well you do it, but more like, do you make it a priority and do it?
Let's thank our experts today for donating their time. You can stick around, get their contact information if you'd like it. It's in the slides as well, which will be sent to you if you register for this event. And the video today, again, will be on YouTube. There are actually some people on Zoom that say, can we get a part 2, part 3 with these guys? That's how good it was. So that's pretty cool. We also, again, want to thank STCU for being our sponsor. We appreciate you making this free to participate. And would you please do us a favor and fill out the evaluation form if you're here in the room. If not, you see the QR code for you on Zoom. If you would scan that and fill that out, we want to make sure these are the best, extremely valuable to you to attend, and so that your business colleagues will come with. You can just leave those face down on your table when you leave. Our next Ask the Experts is usually the third Tuesday of the month from 3 to 4:30. And it's gonna be on August 20th, and our topic is the health to lead well. So we will have a doctor here, we're gonna have an urgent care person here, we're gonna have a wellness person here, we're gonna have a behavioral health person here. As leaders, we have to take good care of ourselves to lead well. It starts with us. We have to lead ourselves well. So that is our next one on August 20th. Hope you'll join us again. May your business continue to prosper in 2024, and we'll see you next time.